Welcome to Front Office Pros. Today, we're going to be going through some Dynasty trade targets for contending teams and rebuilding teams.
Hike!
With us today is a special guest, a friend of the podcast, Anndrew Roper, is coming on down to talk his picks as well as ours.
That is correct, Steve. Joe, it is a pleasure to be here, fellas.
Yeah, nice to finally kind of meet you in person somewhat, Andrew. No, we've text, but actually see your face and everything. It's pretty nice.
Oh, yeah. No, I was it's funny. I think I've told Steve several times that in our Dynasty League, Joe is by far one of my favorite people to trade with because every single time he comes to me with a trade, it is always a good offer right off the bat. And I'm never coming in just being like, I'm sorry, you want Devontae, you want to trade me, you want Devontae Adams from me, and I will give you a 7th round pick. It's just like, come on, guys. Let's come to the table prepared to deal like big boys. And Joe always comes like a big boy, so it's a good thing.
Absolutely.
All right, so Andrew, why don't you start us off here? What are you thinking for your contending team Dynasty trade target?
This is for me?
That's for you. Yeah.
All right. Well, so the way that I'm looking at this from a contending team, you're going to be looking for a player who has the potential to really kind of outperform and give you that extra little bit to get you over the hump. And for me, my trade target for contenders is Bucky Irving. So if we are looking at his year-end schedule, he's got Dallas, Carolina, and New Orleans, right? Now, Carolina, obviously one of the worst teams as far as team defense against running backs. Points above expectation for running backs are about 7.9 points per game for running backs, outperforming their intended total. And if we're looking at Bucky Irving since week 10, he has really started to step into a role where he is getting, although it's still a bit of a split, he's getting a good chunk of the workload. Week 10, he was the 7th best running back. Obviously, in week 11, they had the bye, but then he was 3-1. And granted, in week 14, he did go out with an injury early in the second quarter. But week 15, he comes back. As of the time of my checking, he was an RB2. And I think that is something that will definitely continue looking at his schedule moving forward. If you're looking at yards per carry also, Bucky Irving is a special place among running backs. As far as if you look at running backs on the year with over 100 carries, you've got Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, Jahmyr Gibbs, Bucky Irving. He is absolutely killing it right now. He's making the most of the yardage that they're giving him, and I can see that continually becoming something that is going to benefit a team looking to kind of push themselves over the top in the playoffs. Also, as far as his pass catching capability, this man has not missed a target since week 4. So he is a reliable pass catcher who is getting great yards per carry. Highly recommend him for a contending team.
Yeah, I like the pick. I mean, you're not wrong. His schedule coming up makes a lot of sense. You know, at Dallas and then Carolina, and then if you so happen to play in Week 18, you also have New Orleans. I mean, I don't really know if you can get a better schedule down the stretch. My only thing is that obviously, you know, I would have liked. I don't know if it's just because he was recovering from the injury. Like you said, he is in a timeshare a little bit. You know, with Rachaad White got 15 carries last week, and so did Bucky Irving. Both were somewhat involved in the receiving game. So, you know, do they try to preserve Bucky Irving? Obviously, the Buccaneers are in the mix for a playoff spot right now. So, are they going to try to give him more workload? Or are they going to try to balance it with Rachaad White? Plus, if you're trading for him, he's a rookie this year. So, even though I do agree with you, he's contending. You know, will you have to pay up a lot to go get this guy is my only thing.
Right, and that's totally fair. I do think, though, that specifically if we're looking at the timeshare, you'll see that Bucky Irving has slowly but surely been carving out more of a role for himself. He is no longer just an insurance back that is going to be able to come in, and he is really, really starting to establish himself as consistent player. I granted you will have to pay up a bit for him. Unfortunately, though, I think with the last 2 weeks of the year, that's something that's going to happen no matter what. Especially when it's coming to playoffs, you're willing to make those sacrifices to get over the top. And as far as Bucky Irving goes, he's not someone that I think a lot of people immediately think about as far as, oh, hey, here's someone I'm going to go out to put my team over the top. I think he might be able to get away with a slightly less expensive haul in order to try and get him than if you were to go after someone who has a whole backfield lined up. So from that perspective, I do completely understand that, but I think the fact that he's in the backfield works to his advantage because he's been consistent as far as making the most of his opportunities. And as we see, just because someone's in a back, just because someone is in a, wow, I'm blanking. What's the word?
Timeshare?
Yeah. Just because someone's in a timeshare does not mean that they are immediately disqualified. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs, he is the third best running back on the year. David Montgomery is still a RB1. So just because there's a timeshare does not mean that they're not going to be able to perform.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point, Andrew, as far as the timeshare goes. And, if you've been following along, you know that I'm going to like this pick. I mean, just recently talked about him on a trade show as well a few weeks ago before we started talking Dynasty, which shocked Steve just because he knows.
Well, because you didn't like it at the beginning of the year. I tried
Correct.
telling you that Bucky Irving was going to be something against Rachaad White, and you were poo-pooing that.
I was because I was a big proponent of Rachaad White and just believed with his receiving prowess last year that it was going to just continue no matter what, even with the incumbent of Bucky Irving coming in there. But I think Rachaad White getting injured early in the year allowed Bucky Irving to kind of show what he could bring as far as this explosiveness, which is no doubt different than Rachaad White. He's not in there for his efficiency in these big plays. That's what Bucky Irving brings to the table.
Yeah, and I'm going to be perfectly honest, Joe. I was probably more so in your camp at the beginning of the year. I solely picked up Bucky Irving because I'm like, you know what? He's a solid rookie coming in. I want to make sure if there's a chance that an insurance back is going to kind of come up and steal some potential carries away from him, I want to make sure that I get him on my team. But it definitely has changed for me over the course of the year.
All right, Joe. So who's your dynasty trade target for contending teams?
Yeah, I'm going to stick with the Buccaneers, actually, and largely due to the strength of schedule that Andrew, had already laid out for us here. And I'm going to go with Mike Evans, who's obviously the Buccaneers, Baker Mayfield, and Mike Evans. They're all motivated to get him this additional 1,000-yard season, keep the streak alive. So I think with that, he's going to continue to have these, good games. He's coming off of a really good game last week where he had 11 targets, 9 catches, 159 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And I just think, with his upcoming matchup, he's got Dallas next week, Carolina the week after that, which Carolina is a little bit better against wide receivers than running backs, but still middle of the pack. And Mike Evans is still a tough guy to stop. So I think, he's a guy that you're going to want to look for and could win you a championship this year. And, I was looking at, the Draft Sharks trade chart here for the Dynasty, and they got him ranked as 36, which I thought was interesting, just where they have some other guys, being that this is Dynasty, offers some younger wide receiver like, Josh Downs or even like a Jamison Williams or even a Xavier Worthy to just kind of go ahead and get a guy like Mike Evans on your squad and go ahead and win the championship this year.
Yeah, I like the pick, Joe. I mean, you're not wrong. Kind of what Andrew was saying. The schedule is really good, and if you had Mike Evans this past week, he might have even helped you carry you out of the round one for a team who was maybe kind of on a bubble team because he wasn't doing much all year. He was injured, for most of the time. So I do like the pick a lot. And these are the type of targets I typically like to go for as a contending team because Mike Evans is older. So he's 31 years old. So, right around that 31, 32 years old mark, he's starting to hit that cliff, and he's going to be 32 in August before the next season. So how much tread on the tires is left for Mike Evans, don't know, but he should be able to give you immediate results as of right now. So you probably don't have to give that much to go get him.
Yeah, and I was going to say, specifically, kind of going to your point, Joe, about the 1,000-yard season, if there is any quarterback in the NFL who is going to be all hyped up about getting his boy to a 1,000-yard season, it is going to be Baker Mayfield. I can almost guarantee you that thought is going to be going through this man's mind, and he is just going to be intentionally feeding targets to Mike Evans to get him over that 1,000 yards.
Well, he only needs 251 yards to do it. So I in 3 games left, I can't see how he doesn't get it, to be honest with you. I mean, because you're right. He's just Baker will pepper him with targets, and he doesn't care if he has a few picks. I mean, who does he have to work with? Although Jalen McMillan has been on the rise recently. I know you didn't even want to talk about him on our waiver wire show, but I think you and I both were surprised in a tough matchup against the Chargers. Even he showed up.
Yeah, he did, and was able to get another touchdown as well. So, back-to-back weeks for Jalen McMillan, performing well. And like you said, it's, with this upcoming matchups that, I think you just want to start your Buccaneers players moving forward here.
Yeah, and one more quick question. And I apologize. I was trying to kind of look this up and I was having trouble finding it. But doesn't Mike Evans have performance bonuses that kick in once he hits kind of that 1,000-yard target?
Totally possible. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know off the top of my head, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case either.
Yeah, I think if he hits it, I think it's a $2 million incentive, but I might be off. But even more reason for Baker to pepper him with targets.
So for my contending target for Dynasty leagues out there, it's going to be wide receiver Keenan Allen. I can't believe I'm saying it because I dogged on Keenan Allen almost the whole year, but it's hard to deny what he's done over the past month. Did you guys know that over the past 30 days, he is 5th? I was shocked by this. 5th in total targets amongst all wide receivers with 41 targets. He's out targeting DJ Moore. He's out targeting Rome Odunze. Right now, he's 32 years old. He's going to be a free agent next year. Who even knows where he's going to go? He said he either wants to go back to LA or in Chicago. Either way, he's going to be 33 years old in April. I think that, as far as his longevity goes, it's not going to be much longer. And so for a guy like Keenan Allen, to me, he's a cherry on top move. I was thinking, do I want to pick a stud player, a guy that you're going to have to spend a ton for? I don't think you always have to do that. I think you could get a guy like Keenan Allen. Maybe it helps your flex plays because your flex is kind of light. I think Keenan Allen down the stretch here, it's hard to deny the targets he has. He goes up against Detroit, which that defense right now is just basically in the infirmary. I mean, everybody's getting injured left and right. You saw what just happened with the Bills. So to me, I think he's going to have a good game. And then he's got Seattle after that, which is also a good matchup. So I think Keenan Allen, although it's not, the biggest name, the spiciest name I could come up with here, I do think that there's value to be had to get him.
Yeah, and I was going to say specifically ever since Eberflus was fired and ever since Thomas Brown is stepping up to the plate, you're definitely seeing that focus of targets heading toward Keenan Allen. I mean, just that change in the offensive philosophy, Keenan Allen is getting a lot more of those targets. So I'm a big fan of that one. I've been hoping for Keenan Allen to get those targets this year, as I specifically have him in our Dynasty League, and he was definitely a bit of a weight on my roster. But I tell you what, he has been a welcome addition, kind of in the push toward the playoffs.
Yeah, I like Keenan Allen as your contender pick, Steve. No denying. I did not know the stat that you let off there with him, being in the top 5 as far as all those targets that he's gotten there. So that was an interesting point. And you mentioned the matchups, and Chicago, even though they haven't been the best, I'd expect them to probably be down against the Lions too, which is just going to mean Caleb Williams throwing even more. So, and you mentioned all the injuries as well. So Detroit and the Seattle matchups coming up is definitely juicy ones.
Well, and even look what he did against the Detroit Lions on Thanksgiving, right? He had 8 targets, 5 catches, 73 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Over the past 4 games, he has a total of 4 touchdowns. So, like I said, I think going forward here, I think it could help you. It's not you probably won't have to give that much for him, because if the Keenan Allen owner is a rebuilding team, they'll be glad to get anything for him at this point.
100%. So, Steve, are you anticipating that these points from Keenan Allen, are they going to come on the back of touchdowns? Are they going to come on the back of yardage? Like, where do you see his value in the offense?
Well, I mean, it's no denying what he's been able to do as far as touchdowns go. I mean, his yardage, he hasn't been over 100 yards. So, I mean, if you're not a PPR league and you're going to have to rely more on yards, then I'd be a little bit more concerned. But, he's having a decent amount of catches. He's getting in the end zone, which, it's not a sticky stat, right? I mean, anybody could possibly get a touchdown. But at the end of the day, if you look at the Dynasty trade chart based on Draft Sharks, he's a 20 right now. You could trade a guy like Jermaine Burton, Dontavian Wicks, Andre Yoshevas, Alec Pierce. I mean, maybe these guys turn into something, but if I'm in the chase of a championship, I don't mind trading those guys to be able to get a guy like Keenan Allen to put me over the top. Are you enjoying this episode so far? Well, if you are, subscribe to our YouTube channel, smash that like button, and hit the notification bell for upcoming videos. We do videos throughout the year, so you're not going to want to miss what we have in store. All right, guys, so we're going to transition now to the rebuilding teams, like me and Joe here in our Dynasty League. So, Andrew, who is your rebuilding trade target?
Well, Steve, I will start this off by caveating with saying that I do like the logic that you guys have shown, just as far as kind of targeting older players for contending teams. Now, so this player that I am about to suggest, he is already doing really, really well. He is the leading wide receiver in receiving yards for his team. His plus 7.5 receptions over expected is the second most since week 9 in the NFL. And he also has an 80.8% catch rate, which is second most for receivers with a minimum of 30 targets. And I realize that people might be flying high on him, but this is a year 2 wide receiver, and we have a year 3 breakout on the way. My rebuilding player is Jaxon Smith-Njigba. Now, I recognize that he is already an incredibly valuable player for a lot of teams, and you will have to pay out a lot for him, but I do not see this man's value going anywhere but up. If JSN is not a top 12 wide receiver next year, I will I don't even know what I'll do. I'll do something funny to embarrass myself for Steve, and he'll get a kick out of it. Sorry, guys. I think the reason why I say you could pull this off is, depending on who the JSN owner is, with Geno's injury, you could probably make the case that JSN is not the player that they want on their team for the rest of the year. You could make an argument and say, hey, what if I trade you Devontae Adams for JSN? Now, I know that's a bit of an aggressive move, but I think that JSN's value going forward for a rebuilding team is going to be astronomical. That man has already shown that he is able to handle a considerable workload. DK Metcalf is no longer the wide receiver 1 on that team. I think JSN is the wide receiver 1. I think he has gotten into that role. We see that Seattle has the 5th highest passing play percentage. And recognizing that Geno has one more year before he goes somewhere else, they're able to, I don't know, somehow get a deal for someone like Sam Darnold. who loves to target the slot wide receivers from 2018 to 2020 out of QBs with a minimum of 500 attempts. He had the 5th most targets. I think that JSN has a very high floor, and I think that's going to continue to go up, and he would be a valuable cornerstone for a rebuilding team.
I mean, as a JSN owner, I will say that, all right, I acquired him because I like the talent. He was, the guy, I think, in that draft class, if I recall, he was my favorite of the group, but I didn't love the landing spot in Seattle because he's going to be third fiddle to Lockett and Metcalf.
Mm-hmm.
And he started off real slow, and then he kind of turned it on. Lockett has just been an afterthought in the offense.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Lockett is pulled out the walker, and he is slowly walking his way out of the arena. That man is done.
Well, you're not wrong. He hasn't done much. I haven't seen him on a walker on the field, but I could see it soon. And when it comes down to JSN, I think for me the big thing is I think it's kind of interesting that DK Metcalf has only had 3 touchdowns this year. DK Metcalf has been a borderline wide receiver 2, even wide receiver 1 at times. The lowest touchdowns he's ever had is 6 touchdowns, although I know, Joe, you're not a big Metcalf fan. I think when it comes down to it, my biggest question is, with Geno Smith, you're saying no longer there, what's after Geno Smith? I know you made a case of maybe Sam Darnold in free agency. That would be kind of interesting, although he's done wonders with O'Connell. Before that, he was, a bust for all intents and purposes. So, he'd be a guy I'd be somewhat, depending on what the offer is, I could be intrigued, depending on if people are really bullish on him, maybe at someone I may consider trading away, to be honest with you, because I don't know his future. I'm not trying to trade him away. I like having him, but I am surprised even on the trade value chart here. You've got guys like Tyreek Hill at 54. You've got Brandon Ayuk at 51. You got George Pickens at 54, and Jaxon Smith-Njigba is at 51. So I'm a little surprised by these values. I mean, so it's not as far as I would have actually thought, because of how good he's been, that his value would have been a lot higher, and it's really not. So that is kind of interesting.
Hey, Steve, for the uninitiated, can you explain what these trade values are?
Oh yeah, we're just we like to reference Draft Sharks. They have a trade value chart that we reference a lot, just as a frame of reference. So when talking about it, we just try to have a sticking point on there, and I just think it's interesting, just in general, the players that they have in the vicinity of Jaxon Smith-Njigba. And I would have thought that, he would be a lot higher. I mean, you guys tell me. I mean, would you rather have Drake London right now or Jaxon Smith-Njigba? I mean, right now, based on this, they're saying that Drake London is way better than Jaxon Smith-Njigba. I don't really know if that's the case.
I don't know that's the case too. I mean, what, he's going to have Michael Penix now? No way. Absolutely not. I don't want Drake London. Like, sure, Michael Penix might come out and just be an absolute stud, but JSN is a proven commodity, and he still has the same quarterback. So I would much rather have him.
I'll take Drake London with Michael Penix, just because
interesting.
Michael Penix is willing to push the ball down the field, which Kirk Cousins really hasn't been, and for whatever reason they don't really use Drake London in that fashion either. And Michael Penix had some of the best deep ball placement on his throws in college, so I'm curious to see how that translates over to the NFL. And I think at least there's stability there at quarterback in Atlanta with Drake London, where, to your point, Steve, you have no idea who's coming in to play quarterback if it's not Geno Smith for JSN.
Yeah. Well, I think at this point I have been outvoted. However, I do believe that JSN has proven himself in that way, and I think that especially with Michael Penix, yes, it is good. Like, his deep ball placement is very impressive, but at the same time, it's also a rookie coming into a team that is honestly struggling in a couple of different areas. And it's granted, he might turn out to be the next Jaden Daniels, and maybe it's going to be like Steve and Terry McLaurin, who I gave them so much crap at the beginning of the year about, and he turned out to be right. So at this point, I think I'm gonna caveat my response with I think I'd rather have Geno Smith with JSN for now than the unproven commodity, but I could see the pathway that you're talking about.
Yeah, it's interesting, Andrew, though. Steve has gotten several different offers for JSN in our Dynasty League, and I have always advised him to hang on to him because I do believe in JSN, and I do think he's intriguing, but it just happens when talking about comparing him with Drake London, who's got a rookie quarterback and should be stability there now compared to after this year, the uncertainty there with the quarterback. That's really the difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Steve, just to clarify, when I was asking the question about kind of the Draft Shark numbers, I was more so asking like what the range is to get a sense of like what is a 54.
Top is 100, and then it goes down to like 0.
I'm only giving my boy a 5 out of 10. That's ridiculous.
So, Joe, who is your trade target for rebuilding teams?
Yeah, a little bit unconventional with this one, but I'm going to go with tight end Brenton Strange.
A little strange, Joe.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's a strange pick here. I know maybe I'll get some flack for this one, but I think just largely due to the fact that, I was looking at, the contract of Evan Ingram and the fact that next year there's a potential out for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and they can save like $6 million next year against the cap if they decide to move on from Evan Ingram. Now, Brenton Strange is a former second-round pick, so decent draft capital for a tight end, and he's coming off of a good game with Mac Jones. As we mentioned on our most recent episode as well. So I'm just curious if you're looking for getting a tight end. Sometimes those are hard to acquire in the dynasty leagues. I think you might be able to get this guy now when he's kind of on the cheap, and maybe there's potential in this offense next year with Jacksonville. You saw what Evan Ingram was able to do with the Jacksonville Jaguars offense, who was kind of struggled with the Giants, comes over with Trevor Lawrence and became one of the top tight ends. Is there a similar pathway for Brenton Strange possibly in the future here?
Do you have any concern, though, about the front office at large, though? I mean, the Jaguars, there's been much speculation that there may be a front office change based on how disappointing the Jaguars were this past year. Shad Khan, the owner, maybe feeling like it's time to change it up a little bit. I mean, Doug Peterson had consecutive disappointing seasons. Him and Trent Baalke, are they on the out? And if they're on the out, what does that mean for a guy like Brenton Strange? So you're talking about a completely new regime, so new head coach, new GM. Now that could, to your right, pave the way where they clear the cap space to Evan Ingram, and maybe they put Strange as a starter. But he's going to have to prove himself, going to have that opportunity to be the tight end. Whereas Peterson's offense, to my knowledge, typically has done very well in supporting tight ends from a fantasy perspective. So it's interesting. I think it's one of those things where it's like, do you believe it or not? We saw Strange have this immediate, it's been 1 week, right? So this could be a complete nothing burger, or it could be a sign of things to come. And, either as a Strange owner, you're like, oh, let me cash in now. Good luck, right? Or it's like, should I hold on? So I don't know. It's a strange pick, Joe. It's strange, but it's interesting.
Steve, get out of here with that joke.
It was his real big boom week, but I mean, he had prior weeks, where he was, getting 5-6 targets in the offense, had a couple of touchdowns as well, but no doubt this past week was the best performance that he had.
And just to clarify, 11 for 73, right?
That is correct. On 12 targets.
Yeah, I mean, granted, I feel like I hear 11 receptions, 73 yards. What does that come out to? Is that like 6.5 yards per reception? Like
6.6 to be exact. Yeah.
Yeah. I think my only worry is I mean, granted, I'm not going to go too much into how much I dislike Trevor Lawrence. I think that's my primary worry is Trevor Lawrence and kind of the emergence of Brian Thomas as like a primary figure. But I think I'm also a little worried about Brenton Strange potentially falling into a role kind of similar to what we see with like Wan'Dale Robinson, where it is a lot of receptions, and if you're in like a half point or a full point PPR, that's fantastic. But the upside is capped because there's short area targets, and I think that's the one worry that I have. But I mean, 11 receptions, like it's not something to shake your head at.
I will say one thing going to your favor on this, Joe, is that Christian Kirk, I believe they can get out of his contract or he's a free agent coming up. And depending on what's going on with Gabe Davis, I think they can get out of that contract as well. So you're really only talking about Brian Thomas as the main option. So other than that, who else is there? And that's where you could say maybe just based on pure opportunity, Strange does rise to the top. All right, guys. So my trade target for rebuilding teams, a little unorthodox on this one, but hey, you did it, Joe, so I can do it as well. Let's go with wide receiver Ricky Pearsall, rookie first-round pick out of the Florida Gators, and a guy who we haven't seen all that much of, obviously due to the fact that he got shot and was recovering from that. Andrew, that's not funny.
I know it's not. I'm not laughing at that.
Oh, okay.
I'm laughing at the fact that I think you wrote Rocky Pearsall in the chat.
Oh, okay. Yes, he's very valiant. That's why we call him. That's why we call him Rocky.
That's fair.
Adrian. Anyways,
Adrian.
So when it comes down to it, you look at the San Francisco offense. This is an aging group. You got George Kittle. He's not getting any younger. I think he'll be 32 next year. Deebo Samuel, for whatever reason, seems to have taken a drop. No pun intended. Next year he's going to be on a 1-year deal left. $15 million is his cap hit. Now he's got a lot of dead cap because they've restructured it so much. There's just a boatload of dead cap. Brandon Ayuk is going to be coming back from an ACL injury. So there's this San Francisco 49ers team, I think, could change quite a bit. And we've seen that the Kyle Shanahan offense has been able to produce really good players. So I think, in my opinion, Pearsall may take a little while to mature. Think about a guy like Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk was not a stud right away. It took him at least 3-4 years before they finally, became who we know who Ayuk is. So I think you hold on. That's why you get a guy like Pearsall. You could get him probably for dirt cheap and just hope eventually he turns around. I don't think you're going to have to give up that much to get him depending on where he was in the draft and who, where he was taken. Maybe people say I don't want to get rid of him for nothing. So you might have a hard time with that, trying to find common ground. But I think he's a guy who's kind of interesting, so I'd go after him.
Joe, do you have any thoughts?
My one question was going to be, do you think you could get him possibly for cheaper if you just wait maybe a year? You're saying that you might have to wait for Pearsall. Is this one season of kind of disappointment for the person who drafted him enough to make him want to trade him, where maybe if it's 2 seasons of kind of underperforming in their eyes, do you possibly be unable to acquire him for a better price?
It's possible. I mean, you could wait. I mean, you don't have to do it now, but I mean, you also have to contend with the fact that he could turn it around next year. I mean, it takes a couple of injuries and then all of a sudden he's a starter. This is not the most healthy group here.
Yeah, no, it's not.
I think my main concern is that, I mean, honestly, as far as the pecking order in San Francisco, it is more crowded than Bath and Body Works on Black Friday. There are so many targets in there, and granted, we're talking about dead cap hit and kind of contracts kind of wrapping up soon. But I mean, we've seen the emergence of Jawan Jennings this year. Jordan Mason is
left.
Huh?
1-year deal left.
Fair.
Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, and Jawan Jennings after next year will all have 1 year left.
You don't think that they're going to re-sign Jawan Jennings?
I think they do. I think they prioritize him over Deebo.
Oh, 100%.
Oh yeah, I would agree with that, but I don't know if they'll have either.
No, they'll have Jawan Jennings. I think so.
I mean, where would you see him going, Steve?
Jawan Jennings is a perfect type of receiver who says, hey, I want to go to the market and make a ton of money and get Marquez Valdez-Scantling money, and then all of a sudden he becomes irrelevant, he gets cut and trails right back to the Niners. That's the type of thing that's going to happen. Or a Gabe Davis.
Than Marquez Valdez-Scantling.
He's like 100%. It's like Gabe Davis last year. That's the type
Gabe Davis is a 1-for-20. Jawan Jennings is way better than him.
What has Jawan Jennings done in the league?
Excuse me?
Seriously? Has he done? Yeah,
what has he done? He's become a completely capable wide receiver too, who fit directly into the slot and has since become a primary target on that team. I mean, this man is able to deal with a heavy target load and is turning them into receptions that are worth something on the field. He's able to get the touchdowns. I mean, what was his high week? Like 176 or something like that?
Yeah, that yardage game against the Rams.
Yeah.
And name 3 touchdowns.
Yeah. Outside of Gabe Davis's freak, like 4 touchdown game in the playoffs, like anytime Gabe Davis or MVS are getting that kind of target share, they're not turning that into that on a regular basis. Jawan Jennings is nothing close to those guys.
Jawan Jennings has 800 yards and 6 touchdowns. Gabe Davis' best season was 836 and 7 touchdowns. He's going to have more because Jennings is going to play the next few games, but it's pretty close.
Jawan Jennings was also injured for, 3 games? And then Brock Purdy was also out for 2 of those games. If you look at Jawan Jennings' performance, ever since he came into this starting rotation, he has performed remarkably better when he is on the field with a healthy Purdy. So I don't think you can make that direct comparison because he's had the injury impact.
Yeah, but who even knows if the Niners are going to sign Purdy? Purdy's going to be up for a contract. They're saying he wants $50 million plus for a guy like Brock Purdy. Give me a break.
So they bring in Sam Darnold. He'll be a perfect fit and be able to feed.
Sam Darnold is the answer for everything. I love it. Like you're just honestly,
it would be, he can be.
Oh. Can you imagine Sam Darnold on this team? It would just be so much fun.
He was on the team, but he didn't even start.
Okay.
Well, that's because Brock Purdy was there.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, Steve. We're talking about the new and improved Sam Darnold, right? It's like Charlie with a haircut. It's just a completely different person.
He got the quarterback rehab from Kyle Shanahan and San Fran that he needed, Steve, and then he's flourishing with Kevin O'Connell over with Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah.
So real quick here before we wrap up the show. Jawan Jennings was a 7th round pick that obviously has maximized his opportunities this year. What says Ricky Pearsall can't do that next year?
Ricky Pearsall is going to be a lot slower next year because he's going to be wearing a bulletproof vest on the field.
I mean, yeah, you're not wrong. What's to say that he can't? But I still think, like you're saying that he could take a decent amount of time to develop. Guess who doesn't need that time? Jawan Jennings. He's already taken that time to develop. I'm just
come on, brother.
I didn't continue to hold him on my dynasty roster because I had the last 2 years holding out hope for this guy. I've always liked him, and of course, the 1 year I decided to ditch him. He's having a great year.
Amen. Come on, say it for the people in the back.
Well, you guys can have Jawan Jennings. I'll take Ricky Pearsall. Thank you very much.
You can have Ricky, man.
Yeah,
because he's going to stay there in San Fran.
Slick Ricky, you watch out.
Yeah. Do you know anything about Slick Rick? It's a terrible human being. I would much rather have Jawan Jennings on my team.
So that does it for this episode. It was great to have Anndrew on. And, we typically, when we have guests on, we usually give a plug. Anndrew just so happens to be a DJ, and he's the one who provided our intro and our outro, if you like our music. Anndrew, where can they find your great tunes?
You can find me on TikTok at Pigeons Are Liars. You can find me on Instagram at Diner Beats. That's where I've got all my music, and occasionally I will post witty thoughts on Twitter at Anndrew Ropes, Ropes. It has definitely fallen off a bit, but who knows? Maybe I'll pop back on and do a yearly tweet just for all the new listeners.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully this was helpful as we sort through some Dynasty trade targets for rebuilding and contending teams. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time.